Welcome to the Her Story Circle podcast, the podcast that brings you the extraordinary tales of everyday women who are changing the world. I'm your host, Gertrude Mache, and I'd like to acknowledge traditional custodians of the land on which we meet today. I also like to pay my respects to elders, past, present, and emerging. Every week, we dive into the lives, challenges, and triumphs of women from all four corners of the globe. We're here to inspire, enlighten, and connect, sharing stories that uplift and empower. So grab a cup of coffee, settle in, and join us as we explore the incredible journeys of women shaping our future. This is Her Story, where every woman's voice matters. Hello, everybody, and welcome back to the Her Story Circle. This is Gertrude Mache here in beautiful Melbourne, Australia. And today I am graced with the presence of yet another fascinating woman. Welcome, welcome, welcome to our tribe. Please tell everybody your full name, where you're based, and share your story with us today.
Hi, good morning. It's actually evening over here, but I'm so excited to be on with you today. I'm Dr. Michaela Johnson, and I split my time between Northern California and rural Alaska. So I get to enjoy a little bit of the Sunshine State and a lot of the rainy state. It's just a wonderful, complex mix of all things that are glorious in nature. So what if every overwhelming emotion you've ever had, every meltdown, every shutdown, every angry outburst was actually proof that your body is working perfectly? We love to think that we are on a perpetual self-healing journey, but actually the thing in your kitchen proves otherwise. If you've ever put your hand on a hot stove, then it demonstrates very quickly that you're working well, because usually your hand pulls right off. And that is a warning to you that something is a danger, something is a threat. Doesn't mean that there's anything wrong with you, actually quite to the contrary. It means you're working very, very well. At some point in your relationships, in your life, you've had a hot stove moment. You've had somebody probably early on in your childhood that gave you a hot stove moment. Someone in your teenage years that reinforced that it is a hot stove in the world that you might touch. And then, of course, as an adult, you paradoxically probably picked out relationships and people that affirm these narratives. I grew up in a 27-foot fifth wheel with no running water and no electricity, and it set the stage perfectly for a hot stove moment. I started very early on telling myself that I don't matter, that I'm not significant. Why would anybody that's living like this, literally in the middle of the woods, matter? Why would they be significant? And this belief actually started to shape all of my choices in life, and probably actually led me to become a doctor in psychotherapy. One thing that I learned and I started to witness right away when I was working with couples is there were patterns that were emerging. It did not matter if they were fighting over who took out the trash or who forgot to pick up the kids or who forgot to bring home the right type of milk. There was an underlying belief in all of these arguments and relationship disconnects. And these patterns started to emerge very quickly. And I started to realize that these core beliefs affect every relationship we have and every interaction that we have with humans all around us. Because at the end of the day, even when we walk out the door to the mailbox, we're in a relationship with somebody, whether that's somebody that's cut us off in our car and we get upset, or even the grocery store clerk who asks, how's your day? There's really no way as a human to get through life without having relationships, and we wouldn't want to, because solitary confinement is actually one of the greatest prison sentences that there is. So relationships are important, and how we interact with these relationships are even more important. What I started to realize is that there were 7 core wounds that were driving all these different relationships that I was witnessing. I'm not good enough. I don't belong. I'm incapable. I'm just not deserving. And that's when I started to realize that once you knew what your wound was, you would engage with all of your relationships in life differently. It's really not about the content. It's not about the dishes or the trash. It's about that wound underneath that gets activated. And when we choose a partner in life, a relationship, it has the ability to wound us the most deeply. It actually activates that early attachment relationship that we had many, many years ago. It's a reflection mirror of everything that we are going through. And this is where I work with couples to help them identify what their primal wound is, what they're going through, and how to embrace and disempower the wound. So instead of showing up, getting activated, letting your partner activate you and trigger you, and then coming back defensively, this is the part where we actually show up differently. And it's a really beautiful thing. What I see a lot is that we show up in one of our responders, our child responder, our teen responder, or our parent responder. So the child responder likes to get teary and guarded and withdraw, maybe even throw a little bit of a temper tantrum. The teenage responder is your justice warrior. They're going to get ticked off. They're going to throw something. They're going to stomp out of the house. The parent responder is the one that's judgmental and critical and takes an entirely different approach, usually criticizing, that sort of thing. And what I find is that once you realize how your partner is activated and in what part of self they're activated, you can actually change the way you engage with them. So for example, if you've activated your partner in their teen part of self, they probably don't want to hug, because what teenager wants to be hugged? That doesn't usually happen. So I'd like you to take a second and think, what was the last fight that you had? How did it go? Who was it with? And how did they react? Maybe you can relate to some of this. In all the years that I've been doing this, I've read 650 self-help books, medical journals, and I've worked with hundreds of clients. Once you start to see how your emotional emergency response system kicks in, you can finally stop the crappy patterns. You can stop getting activated, or better yet, you can react differently if you do get activated. And that's really the key to what 7 Primal Wounds is all about. It didn't just stop at living in the wilderness for me, though. My journey continued where I picked partners and relationships over and over and over again that affirmed that narrative that I didn't matter. It wasn't until I did my own work that I started to realize I could choose myself. I didn't have to look for approval from everybody else. And once I started placing myself in the pilot seat and the wound in the co-pilot seat, I started to navigate a lot better through all the turbulent moments. I didn't have to become so activated every time somebody didn't choose me, and I didn't have to go seek out approval from places on the internet. I could just show up as I was and accept that I mattered because I am. And so I would ask you, what are the core beliefs and the narratives that you tell yourself about how you belong or don't belong in the world, or how capable or incapable you are, or how good enough or not good enough you are? And how are they driving every decision and every relationship that you make? All of these moments have opportunity to define where our car ends up on the road. Maybe we drive it to great places and have an epic road adventure, or maybe we drive it to a dark alley and get ourselves into a lot of trouble. Your primal wound is the engine in your car. Your hand is the hot stove, and you can put it wherever you would like to put it. You can drive it wherever you would like to drive it. It doesn't have to define every moment for the rest of your life.
Absolutely wonderful. Thank you so much for coming online and sharing your story with us. It's intriguing when one sees how far you have come personally on your journey. You grew up in a 27-foot vehicle trailer. How did those early experiences of survival shape the woman that you are today?
You know, Gertrude, I want to be honest with you. I totally buffooned this entire interview, and I'm going to be completely honest about it. I thought that we were just going to do a conversational style. I did not realize this was going to be me talking for 10 minutes. And so I just have to be honest. with everybody watching and listening, that was completely buffooned and it makes absolutely no sense. And if I were to just talk to you like this, I could explain all of it. But yes, I grew up in a 27-foot fifth wheel with no running water, no electricity, and sought approval from everyone and everywhere in my life. And it wasn't until I started seeing these patterns in different relationships playing out that I realized that we all have a core belief. We all have a wound. And my doctoral research defined 7 of them. Once you know what your wound is, you can tattoo it on your wrist. And it can literally change the way you engage with your boss, your siblings, your parents, your partner. And we don't have to be so upset about our emotional reactions anymore because it's perfectly normal. It's perfectly normal to become activated by the people that we love the most, or the people that we have to engage with the most, or the people that write our paycheck. And once we realize what our primal wounds are, we can start choosing ourselves, knowing that it doesn't have to define us, put it in the co-pilot seat, because at the end of the day, your primal wound actually has the ability to protect you from really awful things. Like, it can define and change either good or bad, depending on how you use it. Anyway, that's my recap. I wish I'd known a little bit more about what we were doing today, but yeah.
Now, you often say that you are not broken. Can you share a moment when you realized that this was the truth about yourself?
I mean, the truth is I spent $35,000 in psychotherapy, mumbo jumbo babble and brain help, right? Like, I read every book on the self-help shelf and nothing was changing. And that's when I realized I'm trying to fix something that's not broken. If you've heard of kintsugi, it's Japanese art. A clay bowl is broken. It's shattered into a billion pieces. It's put back together with gold. And what they actually end up with is more beautiful than the beginning. And this is what I realized about humans is we're becoming imperfectly perfect. And that's exactly how we're supposed to be. And once I stopped deciding that I needed to self-help myself and started realizing, hey, my body is working really good. Me getting angry, me having emotions, me crying, me judging myself, me being critical, that's all part of the human experience that helps elevate us and build on the foundation of experiences that we have. And once we know that, it's a beautiful thing. And we don't have to seek out constant affirmations from the rest of the world, because the truth of the matter is a compliment and a criticism, they're the same on the spectrum. And you have to be really careful with who you're taking them from, especially if you're leading with your wound. If you're leading with I am incapable and someone makes you feel incapable or tells you you're really capable, that can be dangerous. Right? You might never seek improving yourself because you think you're wildly capable, and that's a dangerous spot to be. Or you might stay stuck thinking you can't get anything right. That's a dangerous spot to be too.
So can you explain what the 7 primal wounds are?
Yes.
And how they affect our relationships?
Yes, after researching hundreds and hundreds of couples and having them all take the Primal Wounds quiz and then working with them one-on-one to really drill down on what the 7 are, I'll list them off for you. They are: I am insignificant. I am inadequate. I am incapable. I am damaged. I am undeserving. I am powerless. And I am an outsider, different and don't belong. Those are the 7 core wounds. And I find repeatedly some amazing patterns that emerge from people that have the wounds. For example, my incapable types, they go on to be CEOs and entrepreneurs of wildly successful businesses because they're like, hold my beer, I'll show you how capable I am. It's pretty impressive. The undeserver types, they go on to run nonprofit organizations to show the world that they do deserve to be a part of something big. They want to help people. The powerless wounds are the same. The insignificants are the ones that have 50 million things going on in their life, and you wonder how they manage it all. They're hiking a mountain one day, and then they're launching a new product the next day, and then they're giving a TED talk the next day, and you're like, how do they do it all? It's because they're trying to show you how significant they are, right? The inadequate types, they tend to get stuck in that not good enough narrative. They're perfectionists. They're working 70, 80 hours a week to try to show that they're good enough, to feel that they're achieving and accomplishing. And it's really amazing when you start to realize the wounds.
Wow. It's interesting, as you're speaking, one can actually see oneself in one of those wounds. It's Very, very interesting. Now, many people feel paralyzed by fear or imposter syndrome. How have you personally learned to act despite the fear?
I mean, as a pilot, I can tell you I've got this one nailed down because I get in a cockpit with a certain element of fear every time I climb in. And what it really is you just got to create some inherent like safety within the risk, right? So you kind of got to weigh out like what is within my control and what's not within my control. And then you just have to do it anyway because growth comes from discomfort. When we are not comfortable, that is when we take the running leap to get to the other side.
Yeah, I remember reading a book that said everything you want is on the other side of fear.
Yeah, fears, they say, false evidence appearing real.
Yes.
And
yes.
it really is perception. Now, I'm not going to go jump off a bridge without having some safety measures in place. I might still be afraid even with the safety measures in place, but I've got to take that risk if I want to experience that exhilaration.
Mm-hmm. Now, you've overcome toxic relationships. What strategies helped you to rebuild your sense of self-worth?
I think toxic relationships are something that we're always faced with because truly people that are in a place of elevation and or are working to elevate themselves are going to attract people that want to suck vampire style off of that, right? So I feel like it's an ever work in progress. I don't think I'm like, oh, perfect. I've completely created the wall of boundaries to avoid all toxic relationships from here on out. I mean, I still wake up some days and go, oh, that was a total toxic moment. How did I invite myself into that circumstance again? I think the big thing that I've realized is it's important what you let into your sphere to begin with, right? And your spidey senses are going to tell you when somebody's acting just a little bit off or there's something that just doesn't feel right. And that's when it's a good time to walk forward with caution. If you walk forward from the wound, wanting to be chosen, wanting to be significant, then you're going to try to fight for that relationship or that friendship in spite of the fact that maybe it's not the best friendship or relationship, right? If you're an outsider and you feel different and you want to belong and suddenly someone's inviting you to belong in a group, then you're likely to get yourself into one of those situations more than you would if you're like, is this my wound that I'm leading with or is this my intention? Am I in a reaction space or am I in an intention space? Because again, that wound is there to protect you. So it's not always bad.
Yeah, so just having an awareness each time you're in these situations is what helps. So how do you define resilience and how is it different from simply surviving?
I think resilience comes from grit and grace. So putting in that deep guttural pain in a good way, right? That deep work and having a little grace for the fact that it might not look as good as you want it to through the process. The outcome of that is resilience. You realize, hey, I made it through that. I didn't just survive it, I actually thrived it, and I've taken away something that I didn't have before. I put our teenage boys to work cleaning the yard, and they were not happy, and they were complaining. They were grumpy about it. The pain and the squeezing the weeds is hurting my hands and all this and that. And I said, just go easy on yourself. You're going to see it in a minute. And then they realized how glorious the yard looked when they were done. They could actually see what all that grit. Yeah. And then they realized, I can work in the yard for a few hours and not die. So now they're resilient, right? So now they have a little bit more resiliency when it comes to yard work than they had before.
Oh, I love it. I absolutely love it. What role has empathy played in transforming your adversity into your life's work?
Honestly, empathy has been the bane of my existence. Because that bleeding heart is what got me into trouble more times than I can count, even when it comes down to something as simple as rescuing an animal, right? Like the empathic heart it can do so much good, but it also has the ability to bring you the greatest pain, the greatest wounding. And I think that the joy that we experience from helping others and and the way in which our bucket gets filled up is worth it. But for me, it's been my life experience of the polarization of positivity and negativity. And I think we live in that place. We live in the polars. We live happy. We live sad. We live excited. We live hopeless. We live between those places. And that's not a bad thing. I think that's actually a really beautiful thing. So I think having an empathic heart, it's a double-edged sword. It opens you up to some of the greatest, experiences in your life and the most heartwarming feelings you could ever imagine. And also some of the deepest, most guttural pain.
Wow. Yeah, that's so true. Now, can you tell us about a client transformation that demonstrates the power of recognizing primal wounds?
Gosh, there are so many in the book. I've got a lot of them, but one in particular comes to mind. This particular individual had the "I am an outsider" wound, and she was constantly choosing relationships that would reaffirm that she was different. She would actually pick partners because it's paradoxically comfortable to her, right? She grew up with that narrative. So she picked a partner that affirmed that narrative because she knows it. And those relationships made her feel so rejected and so different and so uncomfortable in her own skin. And when she came to me, she was a fraction of a human. She was small and meek. And I don't mean in the physical sense. I mean in the emotional and energetic sense. She didn't have a sense of identity anymore because she'd hid in the corner for so long. And we actually used quite a bit of art in therapy with the wound to really allow some of it to come out. So we played into that child version of herself. She did a lot of art activities, and a story came up that had a profound impact on her life, one that she really remembers, where she had actually done something in school that was very embarrassing. And it stuck with her forever and ever, but she suppressed it so deep that she didn't even remember it. She didn't remember how it was driving so much of her decisions in life now, in terms of being afraid to be social and things like that. Once we uncovered the wound, we worked on different narratives for her, different framing. We could reframe it. She could say, the story that I'm telling myself in this moment is that I don't belong. She could reframe it and say, actually, I belong because I am. And everything that I am is exactly what this moment needs. And once she started to employ this, she also realized she was quite the introvert, needed to take timeouts, and that her cat was a really good energetic recharge for her and helped her battery up. And so we did a combination of her being able to excuse herself at events where she started to have that "I am different and don't belong" narrative come up. And say, hey, I've had a lovely time, and it's also time for me to go check in on my cat and make sure that he's, getting extra special love this evening. Love you all, and I'll see you later. And she found that when she was leaving places a little sooner, she wasn't getting into these kind of vulnerability hangovers where she was oversharing to try to fit in and that kind of stuff. And it just worked out beautifully. Fast forward a year later, and she would walk in the room with a huge smile and say, hello. And she had this whole vibe going. It's like, wow, this is amazing to see, because this person used to tiptoe into the corner and kind of like sit like this. And now she can walk in this vibrant, like, I'm here. Hello. And when you can really see the physical energy shift in somebody, it's pretty impressive.
Yeah, I can imagine. That is just awesome. So as a pilot, you've had to trust both your training and your intuition. How does that mindset translate into your coaching work?
Well, I use pilot analogies a lot because one of the things that we do as pilots is we actually go up and practice for emergency landings. And the reason that we do that is because you really don't have time to think when you're activated or dealing with a crisis or an emergency. So you revert back to whatever muscle memory is stored in your amygdala. And whatever's stuck in there is what you're going to grab. And if all you've practiced is non-emergency situations, you're not going to know how to react in the emergency. And so one of the things that I teach my clients is it's really important to practice how you communicate and how you work through things when it doesn't matter. Because when there's a fire coming through the building, I'm out for number one. I'm going to shove you out the window so I have a safe landing, and I don't care if you make it or not, right? Like, that's human survival. That's how we work. That's how we've stayed alive as long as we have. And the same is true when you have a fight with your partner. When you are in an emotional survival fight stance, you're out for yourself. You're not out for the team, and you're going to revert back to that me first mindset. And so in this way, I teach my clients, it's really important to go practice your emergency landings. When there's nothing, there's no emergency, right? Because that way, when it does matter, you're going to grab what's in that muscle memory and you're going to have a far better outcome.
Yeah, wow. That's such a beautiful analogy for life. So why do you think so many women feel that they need to have it all together before sharing their stories?
Because we get told that you're a poser if you don't, right? The fake it till you make it thing. We get told that if you don't have it all together, then nobody's going to listen to you. Nobody's going to trust you, and your word doesn't matter. But the truth is, from the moment you were born, all of it contributed to where you are right now. And where you are right now is enough because there's one person in the world that is 5 steps behind you that needs to hear your encouragement. I was once rock climbing, only once. I'll probably never do it again. And there was a woman who opted to start the climb before me. She had the same, if not less, experience than I had. She was one rung ahead of me on the mountain, right? She's a little bit above me on the hill. And I remember I'm struggling to hang on to this rock, and I'm thinking, I just need to let go and give it up. I can't do it. I'm weak. My muscles are shaking. She looked down and she says, honey, if I made it here, you got this. And I thought, okay, I can keep going then. Because we were at the same level, but she was just a little bit ahead, right? And I needed that woman's message, even if we weren't any different in terms of skill. And so there's somebody out there that needs your message right now with all the experience you have or don't have.
Yeah. And that's what her story is all about, really, is how can your story be the light at the end of the tunnel for another woman? Just that little bit of a torch that can help them to keep going. I love it. So what has been the biggest challenge that you faced in bringing your message to a global stage?
Myself.
In the way?
I just get terrified and want to keep myself small. I get worried about what people are going to say and how they're going to receive the message. I get nervous that the trolls are going to come out of the woodwork and say critical things that my heart and soul isn't going to be able to handle because they won't see me and know the real me. I am my biggest challenge. There is no one else to blame except myself. So I am learning how to put my own primal wound in the co-pilot seat every day. Every day. I am remembering, oh yes, that's right. This is that fear, false evidence appearing real. And I need to put in some inherent safety and take the risk anyway. And I just need to be honest about it through the process and have a little bit of grit and grace and come out more resilient on the other side.
That's a thing for most women, unfortunately. It is more common than it's uncommon. So how do you balance vulnerability and authority when sharing your own story?
I feel like that's one of those things where it's good to have someone in your court that you can actually check in with, that knows you, but is outside of you. Because I think it's helpful to be able to bounce something off a mastermind or a friend or a family member that's safe and say, what do you think if I were to share this? And then sometimes they'll come back and say, maybe you twist that story into the third person. so that you don't expose yourself here. Or,
Yes.
no, I think that's a great story and they need to hear that in the first person because they can so relate to that. Everybody can relate to that, right? And I really feel like it comes down to, for me, one big question that I ask myself is, on a scale of 1 to 10, how raw is this in the moment?
Right.
So if I'm talking about something with an ex-partner and I'm in it, or I've got my child involved in it, it's probably pretty raw. But if I'm talking about growing up in Podunkville in a trailer with no running water, no electricity, that's a 1 out of 10, right? Like, I can talk about that all day long. Nobody's going to be hurt. Nobody's going to be offended. And I've learned a lot from that. So I feel like the how raw is it scale is really helpful with that too.
Okay. Oh, I love that. Absolutely beautiful. So what is one step that our listeners can take today to begin rewiring their survival stories?
It just all comes back to that you're not broken, and just ask yourself, what are you telling yourself underneath that reaction, underneath that moment? It's not about the trash. It's not about, somebody didn't text you back in time. There's a story underneath that. And it usually sounds like, I guess I'm just not good enough. I guess I'm just powerless here. I guess I'm just inferior or undeserving or not capable, right? Mm-hmm. Whatever that story is underneath is where you start, because that's where you can say, aha, brain, you are doing a fantastic job of protecting me from this situation. Thank you for being here and reminding me that I'm not broken. And now, how do I want to engage with this? How do I want to move forward from here? And I really encourage people, don't respond from your child or your teen, because the teenager always sends that text message that you regret. Don't respond from that condescending parent that lashes out. Take a minute, get your self-aware adult on board, and then respond from that place. And you're going to see much better outcomes in all your relationships.
I love it. Last question. I'm going to teleport you back into the past. And you are going to go and have a conversation with the younger you, a young woman who went through so much to get to this point, to empower so many. If you could go back and give her 3 nuggets of wisdom based on what life has taught you up until this point, what would those 3 nuggets of wisdom be?
That's a really tough question. It's going to live on the internet forever. I would say, number 1, be very cautious who you take advice from, because it really has the ability to change your perception of yourself. Number 2, if you're the smartest, brightest, and bestest person in the room, go find a new group to hang out with. And number 3, you're not broken. You're not broken. You're perfectly imperfect just as you are, and you are becoming, and that is absolutely beautiful.
I love that second one. That is a very good reminder that you have to be constantly stretching yourself, right?
Yeah.
Oh, I love it. Thank you so much, Michaela, for coming online and sharing your story with our community today. So how can people find you? How are you helping people online?
Well, I'm about to launch on a 7,000 nautical mile aerial book tour, and they can learn about that on skytalkdoc.com. I'm going to be flying my airplane across the coast to coast, across the nation, with 100 books in my airplane to give out and spread wounds to wings around the world. So I'm really excited about that. They can learn about that at skytalkdoc.com, and also take the quiz and learn what their primal wound is from there as well.
Fantastic. And I've got your website at the bottom of the screen in case anybody out there is needing some support and help. Please reach out, ladies. Don't try and do it alone. And thank you to everybody who tuned in today. The Her Story Circle is not just a podcast. We're a social impact movement that brings you the stories and voices of people from all over the world. We share our stories to uplift you, to inspire you, to energize you, but most importantly, to help take you from where you are now to where you're trying to go. So tune in again tomorrow when I interview yet another amazing guest. In the meantime, have a fantastic day, morning, or evening, wherever you are in the world. And thanks again for the interview. Bye for now, everybody. Thank you for tuning into the Her Story Circle podcast. I hope today's story has inspired you to believe in the power of our stories and the difference you can make in the world when you use your voice. I'm Gertrude Mache, and it's been an honor to share this space with you, where voices from all walks of life come together to weave a rich tapestry of diverse perspectives. Don't forget to subscribe, rate, and review our podcast to help us share these stories with more listeners. Follow us on social media by looking for the Her Story Circle podcast for more updates, and join us tomorrow for another episode filled with courage, resilience, and empowerment. Remember, your story matters, and together we're building a stronger, more inclusive world. Until next time, keep making her story. Thank you so much.